Hi, everybody, and welcome to Beyond Politics.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing great. I chatted to one of you just a short while ago. A lot of people going through very tough times, and this has brought us to this topic.
It has the
Yes.
future of housing, and what the
Mhm.
housing crisis is going to look like in the future.
Yeah, and many people under threat of being out on the street, literally. And a lot of people thinking that if they're renting or if they have a bond, that they aren't homeless. And we want to redefine that
We
tonight.
do want to redefine homelessness. You're homeless if you don't possess the title deed of your property, and even title deeds are sticky things.
Yes.
But it's the closest we can get in this day and age of owning something that you can call your own.
And we need to talk about that in itself. The
Mhm.
fact that a title deed actually meant something back in the day, but now
It says something like government still has what rights of it? No, rights preserved. All rights and what preserved. I can't remember
yes,
the exact
which means that we have a title deed to a property, and in that title deed, it specifies that the government still has rights, that they acknowledge the sale price of the property. However,
Okay, let's just take it back to our personal story because you mentioned we own a title deed. During COVID, it became so apparent. I think the pandemic obviously changed everyone's lives, and it depends what industry you're in. Some people's lives were turned completely upside down. But then we realized how vulnerable we all are. And so we made it a priority to secure some kind of property. It's not the property we're living in, and it's the middle of nowhere. It's not necessarily pleasant, but it's paid for. And that is it's a great peace of mind. And I hope that everyone can find a way of doing something similar.
our family will not be homeless. Our kids will not be homeless.
At least not
because of
homeless,
this.
maybe
And
hungry.
it wasn't easy for us to do that. It was tough. However, you can do it without being filthy rich. I mean, we're not rich people, not by a long shot. So we battle to be able to do that. And if you make the effort, it is possible for you to own a property that you can say is yours. It might not be in the most comfortable place. It might not be in a metro anyway, because around metros, property is very expensive.
Extremely. And in fact, that's what I really wanted to talk about more than anything. While we discuss this topic of housing and homelessness and everything in between, always remember what Klaus Schwab said. Who is Klaus Schwab? He's the leader of the World Economic Forum, and he also wrote the book entitled The Fourth Industrial Revolution. And one of his most famous quotes is that you will own nothing and you will be happy. And he genuinely means this. We're going to move into a period where there won't be any property ownership or any possession ownership either, which is frightening because all our music, movies, and books will be on a device. And I suppose all those devices won't necessarily be owned. There are a few car companies that already have employed this model where every 3 years, I think it is, you get the latest model, but you never own the car. But you're always paying. You're constantly paying a high premium for this car, and you're always getting the newest model every few years, but you never own it. You just use it. And then there have been initiatives in European countries, and I'm sure more places around the world, where there are like community hiring co-ops. You don't buy a lawnmower, you rent it from your community. And I can imagine things like that increasing more and more and more. Unfortunately, choice and freedom will be removed from the equation. That's the only problem.
And we need to consider what is property ownership going to look like in future, especially if the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and many governments in future, many politicians might drive a concept where you don't own anything, where cars are just available for people to just drive. What kind of society do you need for that to work? And this is what people need to understand. A lot of people needs to be removed off the face of the earth for that to work.
Well,
a lot.
Unfortunately, that is what's population control.
Yes.
Population control at its best.
Yeah.
So the smart city model and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, as well as the United Nations Agenda 21, can't work with the population that we have. And that is sobering, very sobering.
Yeah, and this is why they say we are overpopulated on this earth, even although we can give every person on planet Earth a piece of land the size of a rugby field south of the Sahara. And this is arable land you can actually work, grow things on, etc. So if you look at it that way, the world cannot be overpopulated. Cities are overpopulated. Towns are overpopulated. There's many things like that where infrastructure just cannot carry the amount of people in an area because politicians didn't provide for it. where they're just sucking your tax money and using it to enrich themselves and grow the size of government, instead of caring about people actually owning property. And owning property, isn't that one of the main things that wars have been fought over throughout the ages?
I think it's why government came up into existence to begin
Yeah.
with.
The ownership of property and what that means. The fact that you can have a piece of land where you can
So it's mine.
yes, that
Mine.
where you
Leave
can
it
grow
alone.
wealth. And growing wealth doesn't need to mean money at all. With hard labor, you can grow all sorts of wealth. You can build infrastructure. You can plant things. You can multiply livestock. It's endless what you can do.
There's lots. So interestingly, what does the future look like with regards to property ownership? The way I see it, my outlook on freedom, governments, and land is that the more space between non-related individuals, the less government you need and the more freedom you'll have. The more on top of each other we are, the more government is needed. And this is why metropolitan areas are absolute disasters and they will always crumble and fall apart. And according to what I've read in history, it has fallen apart since the beginning of time.
Every single one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wherever there's been a high concentration of people, there has been some catastrophe. Usually desertification sets in along with water shortages, and off everyone goes if they do not die in the city centers. And this happens time and time again. Human beings, for some reason, economically, we tend to gather together in high numbers, but it's not healthy or natural. And so what you said, there's enough space on earth for everyone to have a what?
1 hectare, rugby
hectare,
size,
yeah.
half hectare
Which is
or
huge
an acre, yeah.
for every single
Angus
individual,
whether
which
it's a
means
baby or whatever, for 8 billion
it
people.
means currently everyone will have space to grow their own family, and this can
Yeah.
carry on for quite a number of decades. So, what
But
is it
that's
gonna
not
look
how
like?
things work.
If you look at Saudi Arabia had the line or has the line, I think
Yes,
it's the
still
biggest scam
busy,
ever. But
yes.
anyway, the concept of the line is that you shove as many people as possible in a smaller space as possible to have the minimum footprint on Earth so that the Earth can grow without humans' interference or whatever. It sounds great if you love nature and you want to conserve the environment, but the concept of making sure we take up as little space as possible is going to direct us in a place where we will be shoved into what is called a smart city. And I don't think there'll be any home ownership. So in city of Cape Town, I'm not sure if it's true I've seen areas of Durban. I'm not sure how true it is in Joburg. In Joburg, I see big houses on big properties. But in Cape Town, you won't find new houses on big properties anymore.
No.
In fact, houses are being bought and flats are being built on those plots. Those houses are being demolished and flats are going up in its stead. So this is anti-family and anti-freedom. It's an absolute crisis.
And the city of Cape Town is promoting this. I won't mention the party name. Everyone knows who it is. They are promoting this. So we just around the corner from us had ours demolished recently.
And another bunch is being demolished soon.
Yes, yeah, very soon, just up the road.
This is a stress on infrastructure. It's a stress on all the resources that we have in the city. And the traffic's going to be even more of a nightmare now, which means it's also going to be more pollution. So metros are designed to kill, essentially.
Yeah, eventually they have to collapse.
Everyone's unhappy. Everyone hates their job. Pollution, drugs, crime, everything. Cities are the most toxic environments in which to live. Yet we congregate around them only for economic means.
And it's very difficult to become self-reliant within a city because this is the main focus. Well, this channel is solution-driven. So I have to look at solutions for problems like not owning a property. And the self-reliance process, firstly, ensures that you don't have debt. I mean, it's one of the things that everyone should aim for, is to make sure they don't have debt and that what they purchase, that they can do it with cash. And if you look at the amount of money you have available and say, I need to purchase a property, then you can go and do a search on the internet and say property between this and that price and say in 2 years, I want to save for this and see where you are able to actually purchase. And it'll probably be in some town in the middle of nowhere where you will be able to purchase something that you can afford, but it'll be yours. Okay, you'll be able to get a title deed to it and then you can build from there. So many people are renting right now. And with the sheriff at the door for so many people in the complex where we live, families are living with each other to survive. People are pooling money together to pay rent. The amount of cars, 3, 4, 5 cars outside one house tells you a story. And it's just getting worse right now because as many kids being born, they are not buying new houses. A lot of people are still living with their parents. How many of you in the comments tell us still have children in their 20s or 30s living with you? It's going to become the norm. And it was the norm in the past. A family property would be large enough that your children could build homesteads on that property. So people would typically have small farms, which will be a couple of hectares.
That's different.
Yeah, very
now
different.
We have to do that within complexes. And
so now people are living literally on top of each other. I actually saw a new place being built. It's so on top of the next house that they can't get in between the two to actually plaster out the wall to make it look nice.
What a disaster.
So it looks disgusting. They'll actually have to close everything up so you just physically can't see it.
They probably will do that.
Yeah.
Shocking.
And it's a very fancy house.
What do you mean
being built
fancy?
in Melkbos-Strand. I saw it today.
Okay.
So they're building this huge concrete structure, must cost 3-4 million rand. A mansion on the beachfront. And it's built literally within half a meter of the house next to it, and no one can get into the gap to do any work.
Yes. Space and freedom are synonymous, in my opinion. So it's a very big problem. So when you live in a big city and you're living in a tiny place, which seems to be more and more the norm these days, you tend to be driven out of your home. Out of your home. Why? So you can spend money. You go to the coffee shop, you go to the internet cafe, you go get your laundry done or whatever it is. But you're leaving your abode to what? To spend money. To consume. Not produce, not be creative, not be free, not to be in true raw nature, but to consume.
If we actually look at how much money we spend on things other than property, it tells a story. And 200 years ago, everyone spent all their time on their property and building wealth on that property. All their time was spent doing that. That was probably 80 to 90% of their time. The rest was leisure time. Now we spend probably 30% of our money on property because that's what you're allowed to use on your gross for a bond. The rest is consumed by industry, businesses, large corporations, and government. Don't forget government with regards to taxes. Because taxes didn't exist the way it does now 200 years ago. So everything has shifted and changed completely. And once again, the theme of this live stream is the fact that you need to become self-reliant and that we are redefining what it means to own a property. That if you don't have a title deed, and even if you have a title deed, you still don't own the property. The government still has a right over that property. So to change that, we need to change our contract with the government or the type of government that we have.
So we need some kind of like second type amendment in our constitution that ensures that you do have property rights.
Proper property rights. At this stage, like you say, the disclaimer makes it possible for government to do almost anything. And our current constitution in South Africa allows the government to get rid of your property without paying you. There is nothing saying that they must compensate you at all. So we are, even as title deed holders, subject to a government and what they have to say. And this is problematic in itself.
Well, the whole government is a problem. The concept of government is a problem. As much as I say we always need government, to a tiny degree we do. But for the most part, we need government to stay out of our lives. That's what we need. And right now, government is doing quite the opposite. And so with homelessness, you have, we've defined in our previous video this morning, is it 4 levels of homelessness, 4 degrees of homelessness? Obviously, you get actual homelessness living on the streets, which is what everyone defines homelessness as. And that is an issue all on its own. What does government do? Local government takes care of homelessness. It's a local government issue. And there'll be government shelters with lots and lots and lots of regulations, or not regulations, rules. Little rules. Some make sense to a degree.
So if you get thrown out of your home, you can go to your local police station and there will be a social worker there that can give you advice as to what to do, literally. I mean, this is me telling you how our system works right now.
Yeah. And so I know some of the rules in shelters, like if you're a couple, you'll be separated. obviously. I can understand from a management perspective. Drugs, you obviously have to be sober when you rock up, which poses a huge problem. Like in the Daily Maverick article, the author so correctly said, you can't just switch drug addiction on and off. It's a much larger, broader issue, rooted in trauma and poverty and a whole lot of other things. And then the other rules are usually time-based, a curfew-based. And when you belong to a family, usually there are certain rules as well. My house, my rules, not under my roof type statements. So I can understand, but it's not really addressing the core issues. So the city displaced...
It's not solving the problem.
No, the city displaced a lot of homeless people from the
castle. And they just moved to another place.
And we have seen the influx here in the northern suburbs.
Many people.
And so it's not... So moving them is not solving the issue.
They wanted them out of the city center.
For tourism.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what they wanted.
So government is incapable of dealing with the social problems that we have in any given area. And so community actually has to stand up and fix it. But no one wants to. Everyone's exhausted and overtaxed. So it's not going to happen.
You see, if you weren't paying as much tax as you did, it would be much easier for communities to actually work together to create solutions. And this is what you're advocating
I believe in crowd-funded NGOs instead of the government taxing for social services. And then because the NGOs are not funded by government and funded rather by the people, it's better accountability. So as soon as there's mismanagement or whatever, people will stop funding and everyone will move on to the next place.
There's many NGOs just created to get money from government and they do nothing. Zero accountability.
It's a leeching system as bad as politics. Right now, the way the current government empowers both the political system and NGOs. But that's a story for another day. So that's the first level of homelessness. The next would be people living in informal settlements. So informal settlements, this is land that is not zoned for residential use. This land will usually be in floodplains or...
it could be in dangerous areas,
highly
under power
inappropriate,
lines and various other
So in
things.
other words, people should not live there. Maybe industry can be built there, maybe something else, but
like
not...
sand dunes. I mean,
I know.
Sand dunes move. You don't build on sand dunes.
But as per usual, urbanization influences the flow of people from a more rural area into a highly populated area in search of economic opportunity. Me too, I'm one of them. I come from Port Elizabeth and I moved to Cape Town for work opportunities. So it's natural. That's what we do. However, okay, so that's the next level of homelessness. And then if you include informal settlements into the homelessness definition, then we see that the housing crisis in this country is at an unbearable level. I don't think the government can work fast enough or even comprehend how to spend our taxpayer money fast enough in order to solve the problems.
I don't think that there is enough taxpayers' money to look after the problem.
No, that's the thing.
In Cape Town, half of the people would be homeless by that definition.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite frightening. Quite frightening.
The Cape Town Metro.
Yes.
Literally more than 50% now.
And then I would like to include another definition of homelessness, and that is people who rent, which is the majority. Like most people rent. The amount of property owners is much less than renters statistically. And
which means the wealth is in the hands of a few.
Yeah. As usual. So think about it. If you rented your whole life, I rented my whole life. Since I was little, rented a lot, and it's very hard. Not me personally, but my family. So it's very hard to actually settle and build a home, a sense of identity, a sense of place, or anything like that, which I find quite interesting. Just psychologically, the ramifications of renting, and anything can happen. We saw in the pandemic, property owners renting to you, they might need the place that they're renting to you during some kind of emergency, and all of a sudden you're out on the street. You might think, okay, but then I can just rent the next place. But if the market is such that there's nothing available, what are you going to do? And this is the problem. So we might feel secure in the fact that we're renting. There's many pros to renting, but at the same time, it's not housing security. It's not property ownership. You can't truly build wealth on a place that you're renting. You can't make any permanent changes to benefit you or your family. You can't make changes that will enhance your lifestyle or your income opportunities, because it's not your place where you can do whatever you want. So I include renters as homeless.
Yeah.
You're currently sheltered, but you're homeless.
Yeah.
You have a roof over your head, but you're still homeless.
Krista makes a good comment here. The biggest problem is when one has a job but don't have or lost your roof over your head. So eventually you lose your job. You don't get enough sleep. You can't keep yourself clean. All of those things are super important. And in most of these informal settlements, where there's informal housing built on places that's not zoned for housing because they're in 100-year floodplains or 50-year floodplains,
And we see the ramifications of that
we
when
can
there's
see
bad
that.
weather.
Exactly. Those places don't have running water infrastructure or normal toilet infrastructure or electricity infrastructure. And the government eventually puts it in. And to varying degrees. Electricity, I mean, you see satellite dishes everywhere. So once again, the money goes towards large corporations. Very cleverly done. And it doesn't go towards property ownership. So we don't have a government focused on property ownership.
No, we don't.
At all.
Absolutely not. In fact,
or that want people to have title deeds.
Disclaimer, as far as I understand, was it George Bush? Was it Bill Clinton? Or was it George Bush? One of them focused on property ownership, and that's when the Wall Street disaster happened. But there was a whole lot of corruption as well. I wanted to read a couple of comments because they are relevant here. Gerda says that there's a high-rise building in China where every floor is a smart city. Very sad. I think China, I've watched a couple of documentaries. I would love to visit there because life seems very interesting, very different, very much geared towards the Fourth Industrial Revolution living. And also what I've seen in documentaries is how you can rent a bike, no money needed. And people also just trust that things aren't going to get stolen. I don't think you rent it.
I think you just use it from one place to the next.
You use it from one place to the next.
Holland has got that as well.
Using an app.
Yeah, there's European countries. Phil said earlier that with BMW, you can now pay monthly for your seat warmers to work.
That's weird.
Yes, digitization, right?
Yeah. Makes me think of a conspiracy theory, which I rather won't mention.
Yeah.
A tiny piece of land, which used to be the parking lot for Nature's Garden Nursery, now has a block of flats on it. You can touch the block as soon as you walk past. Flats are rented. Densification.
Yeah. And this is a huge thing that the City of Cape Town Council has spoken of. Densification. We need to densify every space we have. It needs to be high dense housing so that enough people can get housing. And I don't think they consider the crisis that comes with it. You know, when you're putting people on top of each other, all the extra water consumption, the electricity consumption, there's transformers that have to supply that power. The power lines have limits of what they can handle, sewage systems, etc. So it's a real crisis, housing in this country. And the problem is that everyone is being forced into metros. This was part of the Agenda 21
plan.
Not
buying property in metros.
Having 70% of people inside metros. Yes, not owning property. Yeah. They don't want people to own property. No. They don't care about that.
So you'll start off renting and then it'll move on to some social credit
It's like really a process to get a title deed as well.
Yeah, Jonathan says, I earn a small amount of money and for me to buy a house, I would be dead and it will not be paid up. And I think that's the case for many people. I think millennials have felt that way.
A lot of people are in that boat.
I mean, you could leave home and purchase the property when you were young. The millennial generation cannot. A so-called, well, generalizing, but generally can't. A so-called green area opposite our house has now been earmarked for flats to be built there. There you go, your views. That's awful.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Hi, Candace.
Rent to buy TV. Yeah, it's endless how things will transform towards a global general income.
It's global communism.
Yes, it is. Where everyone gets an income in this new world where artificial intelligence, and that's another thing we need to discuss, where artificial intelligence is going and how rapidly it's actually changing. Today, for the first time, on our first video we put out today, we had complex auto answers for your comment.
We'll never use them, disclaimer.
We've never used those auto...
My hair's on you.
Oh, sorry.
It's annoying.
I don't mind.
I do.
So you get auto comments underneath your comments that we can just click on as a reply.
You might have seen it. You might have seen something similar in Gmail.
Yeah.
Where it will fill in a sentence for you. Similar thing.
So today, for the first time, there were complex answers.
Long ones.
Yeah, long ones to complex that included religion, faith, perseverance, and all sorts of things.
Yes.
Like 2-sentence
Could almost
answers
make you teary-eyed.
coming from AI, artificial intelligence. But we could have clicked on it and people would have thought that is perfect to use.
How heartfelt and
Yeah, but we
profound.
are way too hard to say things like that.
No, yeah, well,
it's yes, it's difficult to get emotional about every person's situation because there's just so many stories. And if you go and watch the video we put out this morning and you go and read the comments, you will see how close many people are to being on the street, which is also part of what we are discussing tonight. How many people are 1 or 2 financial disasters away from being on the street?
yeah, a lot of people.
Literally, your furniture and everything being thrown out on the street. And this is happening to people. I went and Googled pictures in South Africa for people being put out on the street, and I got so many pictures.
It's awful.
For that.
Yeah.
Even where the red ants are used to throw people out of low-cost housing. It's not just squatter camps being broken down.
The right to just basically dwell somewhere. It's very sticky. Chris is saying, how can this be practically changed if system change is achieved? I think the entire philosophy of government changing will ensure that. So we have a communist-minded government where government wants to be the savior of all the problems. And then
it gives them power over property. Big power over property. You won't see government actually making government land available to help people. That's not what's happening. So most low-cost housing or RDP houses are built in places that were not zoned for housing.
Yeah.
Most of them.
And the housing is such that children are not growing up in a healthy environment. Therefore, they go to the streets. Therefore, they get involved in gangs and drugs, which perpetuates a cycle of poverty and gangsterism. So there's many, I think the education system coupled with a different freedom first mindset in government will automatically change that, because instead of just handing out grants and all the rest, like how a typical communist government does, what you do instead is drive self-reliance initiatives and incentivize business development across South Africa, not centered around metros. So there'll actually be a de-urbanizing movement happening. And with Ohm's model as an example, we want to divide the metros, most of the metros, the big ones, into at least 4 separate local municipalities. And I think that's going to help a lot.
Candace, wow, you're really in a good situation, saying that they've just sold their house and bought a small holding that's got water on it, 2 little streams. Wow, that is really
That's
awesome.
amazing. Very lucky.
Yeah, it's very important that people make decisions like that. And since 4 years ago when this channel started and we started exploring what's happening in the world and telling people what we know, many people have made big decisions and have moved out of metros. And a lot of them are very happy that they did. Joburg at the moment, I have people contacting me all the time, telling me where we've only had water for 3 hours a day, or we haven't had water for 2 weeks. This is in a metro. So the fact that you might have water in the Joburg area, count yourself lucky, because there's many people that do not. And when you become self-reliant, you know that you're going to have a water tank where you can use that water as a buffer. And having buffers is nice. So even with battery systems for electricity, batteries are a buffer. And if you see that as a buffer for water, electricity, and food storage as a buffer, once you have these buffers, or like us actually having a separate property that we own, that we can go to, we can stay there forever unless government decides that they want to use that space of land. Those are buffers that you can build for yourself. And there's no excuse not to start somewhere. And the first buffer you should build is water, self-reliance. I mean, the first
But again, it's so much easier to do have a long-term self-reliance vision if you have your own property.
Absolutely.
So we say the order is water, food, and shelter, and immediately that's the case. So in whatever your shelter is, whether it's a tent or bus stop,
doesn't matter.
Just
your
to have
car, anything.
Just to have a little emergency kit by your side won't hurt anyone. But long-term planning, the first step is having your own property outside of a metro. And that's actually the gist of this
Yes.
entire live stream,
Yeah.
is that you can own a property. If it's in a metro, it's going to be a little bit of a disaster. So a lot of people are moving from Joburg to Cape Town. We're in Cape Town. And you're just delaying the inevitable. With the amount of growth happening, the amount of property development happening, there's going to come a point where our infrastructure is also going to collapse. So what you're experiencing in Joburg is going to happen here, I don't know, 5 to 10 years' time. I can't predict how long it's going to take, but it's not going to be pretty. And I believe that the best, most sensible place to buy property, if you are able to, is in anywhere that's not a metro, that hasn't got an airport and hasn't got a harbor. That's probably going to be the best. That's my opinion. And then, yeah, I suppose your budget will dictate the rest. There are parts of this country, if you troll Property 24 enough, where you can get very, 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 very cheap land. Very, very, very cheap land. And who knows, maybe family members can pool together. Although I wouldn't
there's
advise.
many things that people can do and need to do. At this stage, when this housing bubble bursts, like in Cape Town, it will be disastrous for the economy, because at this stage, so many people have invested in property, people that depend on people paying rent for them to pay their bond. In other words, they don't earn enough money in a month if they don't have someone renting. And I know many people that have 3, 4, 5 flats that depend on the renters. Now, when those people start defaulting, what happens?
Very stressful.
And when what I mean by the bubble burst is when the economy gets so bad that you hit that critical mass of people not being able to pay, where you can't just replace it. At the moment, Cape Town is receiving an influx of people from Joburg, but a lot of them are leaving because the cost of living in Cape Town is extremely, extremely high compared to Joburg. And I think we have a flux happening in the country now where people are moving to smaller towns. And I see many articles popping up now in mainstream media where they say these towns are real gems that people are moving to outside of metro. So they're starting to pick up on this trend. And there's also more people moving back to the Joburg area now, actually more than Cape Town.
Yeah, at least
which
you have
is
a yard in
Yes,
Joburg.
something.
Cape Town, you have the dirty, oily, slimy ocean.
Yeah,
Yay.
you actually experienced that today.
But in Joburg, at least you have a yard for your kids to play. Yeah, I can't. Sorry, I say it again. I probably sound very negative. I'm not a negative person. I'm extremely optimistic. But I hate Cape Town's beaches. They're awful. They're dirty. They're full of litter. I can't even count how many pieces of plastic I saw in the ocean today while my kids and I were at the beach. And it's oily. Ugh. It's awful.
Yeah.
So I don't know. People love Cape Town. I mean, it's been voted one of the top, 5 or 10 best cities in the world.
And this was in a place that's considered high in income.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to look at from a distance, but to live in and enjoy, nope. And everything that's nice about so-called Cape Town in these articles are actually outside the metro.
Yes.
Like Jonkershoek Mountains or Paarl Mountain or Wellington
It's
or
not in the
Franschhoek. It's
metro
outside
itself,
the metro. So
yes.
it's really overrated. There's a huge, must be a huge PR machine behind the city or something, because it's really not that special.
You know the people behind it. You've met with them and had meetings with them.
Have I? Oh,
Yes.
yes, those people.
Yes.
So I don't know. Okay,
Think of a fox.
I'm really
In
lost
Afrikaans.
now. I don't know what that is in Afrikaans.
DOS.
Oh.
Yes. A
So
vos. A
anyway,
blipvos.
shush. You're so rude. Anyway, so there are massively beautiful places across South Africa. I have a couple of favorites. And I know
Garden
many
route.
of you are also in very rural, far out places that are rich in nature, beautiful. I read your stories about how you feel so fulfilled and your soul feels full because of how beautiful it is. Why do we torture ourselves in cities for salaries? Why do we need salaries to pay bills? Why are our bills so high? Because we live in cities. It's a cycle. It's the same.
But just remember, and we have to finish up soon, that a lot of people are going to be under huge financial pressure and are going to be out on the street. Literally, if they do not become self-reliant or start putting self-reliance practices in place. This is super important. We cannot overstate this. That The wolves are at the door. And for a lot of people, as you said earlier, they are one financial crisis away from being on the street.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are behind on their rent? How many people are behind on their bond repayments? Throughout the COVID pandemic, that happened to many people. And it was a real crisis. I mean, we got our rental at the tail end of the COVID pandemic because a family was literally thrown out because they couldn't afford rent.
They hadn't paid for a long time.
For 6 months
Actually,
plus.
it was very bittersweet to move in. It's very tragic.
To know that that is the situation, or that was the situation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just desperate all around for many people. And many of you might be in that boat right now. And once again, self-reliance is key. Who you know is key. What you know is key. The places you know of is key. There's many towns in this country where you can live for cheap. A lot of people just refuse to go there, even think about it, even look at the opportunities. And you can own a property that you can call your own, that you can live on. Especially if you just want to buy land. I mean, you can at least put a tent on it if you have to. But you can buy land for cheap. There are places where you can buy plots for 30,000 rand, 70,000 rand, big plots that you might have to travel to. But some of these places have luscious green grass. You can really build something beautiful if you want to. It's not going to be in a metro. You're not going to find that anywhere near a metro. Even within 200 kilometers of a metro.
I'm very curious to see how our South African government navigates the promise and development of smart cities, and how the human population is going to be coerced to live in one. There's various scenarios which can play out, which I think I've discussed in previous live streams, and it's going to be interesting. I think whatever happens, we need to hold on to the right to own our own property, no matter what happens here in South Africa. South Africa is more than big enough to house everyone with ample space and freedom. And yeah, we just need to keep that in mind.
Beaches passed the hepatitis test. What other tests did they pass? It can't be the only test. But yes, I mean, the beach that Laura and the kids were at, they were there for just a short while today. It's gross. A famous town.
It's gross.
About 30 kilometers outside of Cape Town. Famous. I lived there for many years. And yeah, it's grimy. It's unfortunate. And this is the influx of people into an area that don't care for it.
It's consumerism, it's industry, it's many things. What have humans done to this planet?
So if the focus becomes spending the money that you do earn, the fiat currency you do earn, on property or owning a property, that would be a good value spent based on the work that you've put in, because fiat currency just represents your labor. So if you work for the government more or for other corporations because of how you spend your spending habits, and you don't work for owning property, then you maybe need to rethink how you do things.
I feel attacked.
You feel attacked. So.
Okay, people, we have to go. We're doing a members live stream in
20 minutes. Yes.
Worked. I can't see. The mouse is in the way. Worked all my working life in a bank. Missed the first bond payment. Missed the second. Bank really concerned. Missed the third. Legal proceedings will be started. Payment problems. Talk to the bank. It is. There's no real cushioning. I mean, sometimes people just fall into a temporary hardship. Employment loss, and they bounce back, but the bank is not forgiving.
And this is why Lauren is saying that if you believe you own a house, but you are bonded to a bank.
I didn't even go there.
No, please, let's stick to the topic.
The fourth and final level of homelessness is when you have bought a house through a bond and the bond is not yet paid, because it actually belongs to the bank.
Until you have the title deed in your hand.
It's not yours, until you have the title deed in your hand, which is a process on its own.
It can take months.
And I think that's most homeowners are in that in that
Mhm.
bracket. So you're homeless
Exactly.
still because it's not yours.
It's not your house.
And yes,
And
title deeds are fickle, but it's what we have.
as Susan says, it's 3
should
months
stand.
and there's an auction.
Greetings from Hungary. I left SA as I saw everything is going to hell. Oh, well done.
What is Hungary like?
Let us know
Please tell
how
us,
Hungary is. AJ says Utrecht is a town within a game park, and I think that's awesome.
So there are many people moving to small towns that need Sasa. A lot of the small towns run on Sasa grants, literally. But if you have 2,000 people in a town and they each get 2,000 Rand a month, do the math. There's 4 million that can be spent in that economy.
In the town where we have a home, the rental is like 2,000 or 3,000, hey?
Yeah, a month.
Very, very cheap.
Yes. So you're going to rent a large house for 2,000 to 3,000 Rand a month.
And it's a livable place.
Mm-hmm. Has all the infrastructure you need. So people mustn't say that they cannot live or survive. You could have 50,000 Rand in the bank, lose your house, or things that you can sell, and you could literally rent for an extended period of time in one of these towns.
Obviously, also understanding not everyone is in that position. Some people just have a grant and nothing else, no assets, no savings, no nothing, and that's unfortunate.
Well, then the government controls your life, basically.
Yeah.
Then you should start to become self-reliant. Look at the ways that you can generate more income. You need to labor in some way or form, and that's absolutely up to you. You know, no one else can do that for a person.
Hungry, very conservative. Must be fascinating. Oh no.
Yes, Erica. I've paid off my bond, but I'm struggling to get hold of the title deed. Good luck to you. I mean, it's like a marathon.
Probably been lost in a fire.
Oh, my word. Docu-filed fire, right?
Teresa says the house we are renting is being sold because the owners cannot afford the bond. So then you need to find new rent, and it's not easy. It may be better there now, but in the near future, it'll be bad that you will want to come back. Yeah, Europe is tiny. I think that's problems. That's why I say
I would not want to live in Europe right now.
Freedom needs
anywhere in Europe.
Space and freedom are synonymous, like I said, and because Europe's so tiny, it's inevitably
with freedom. With a lot of freedom comes crime and many other things if people aren't responsible enough. And so that is something that comes with South Africa. However, the people are still very free in this country, extremely free. I mean, so free that gangs run the country. I mean, our government is a gang. So, yes, we are being run by gangsters.
Yeah, which in turn takes our freedom away as
yes,
well.
Exactly.
So it's a cycle.
But it's really awesome that you've joined us for this live stream. So let's just sum up quickly.
Yeah, don't be homeless.
Yes. Become self-reliant. So become self-reliant. It is super important. We've redefined being homeless as anyone where you depend on someone else. In other words, if you're still paying off a bond to a bank, you are better off.
Homeless.
Yeah, you actually don't have a home.
If you're an adult living with your parents,
you have a roof over your head.
Yeah.
But you are homeless. So only if you have a title deed to the home do you actually own it to the highest legal degree. And not even that is a guarantee. So we need to change the governance system, and those people that govern them need to change.
In the so-called constitution.
Yes, how people look at property rights, because we don't have many rights, do we, when it comes to property?
Not many. You can go, actually, you should, guys. I wish I had the constitution within reach. That must be on the desk. Go read the constitution. You can download the constitution for free from the Department of Justice, I think. And read property rights. Read that little section, and then it'll be sobering. And then...
Yes, absolutely, Liz. A lot of people do depend on facilities in the metros. And why can't facilities be built in other places? People don't think further. You know, if you look at a town like Paarl, where I grew up, they had a top-notch government hospital there. I don't know how good it is now. I was born in that hospital. But you can build top-notch facilities anywhere. People often think that we are limited. No, government limits you. The way government work limits you, because they are looking after large corporations and big companies and the funders and donors to those politicians and their parties. That is what's happening. So they'll build a road to the harbor so that these people can export their product overseas, but they're not going to build a road in front of your house. Thanks for joining us. It's really awesome to have so many people in this live stream. Please share this with other people. Do like the video. We have 62 likes. We have 118 people watching now, so that more people can get to hear this information. And just remember, if you are put out on the street, every police station has a social worker. They might not always be there, but they will be able to tell you what to do, what you can do, because there are supposed to be safe places that can take care of you. And this is based on our constitution. Now, whether it will happen or not is a different story. But we have in Cape Town, the city of Cape Town, we have what they call safe spaces. They have rules and regulations where family will be able to go if they do become homeless.
I'm very curious to know what would happen in theory if, like, you, me, and the kids were homeless, with teenage kids and younger kids. How would that actually work and what it would look like?
Yeah.
That would be an interesting case study.
Yes, absolutely.
Perhaps this is not the end of the discussion.
So, yes, so how we own property can change. We need a governance system change, constitutional change. We need new people that can think outside the box in government. The people there right now are just rubber stamping what overseas organizations like the United Nations and the World Economic Forum tell them to do. Thanks so much. Good night.
Good night.